right, welcome to Slimehouse, a podcast rated PG for crude humor, outrageous hijinks, and mild language. I'm Jasper.
I'm Jared.
I'm Max.
I'm Nelson.
And I am Sam, and I am back.
Back again for part 2 of the Robert Rodriguez superhero saga.
Big Robert Rodriguez fan.
So in case you guys didn't pick up on it, we're covering the new Netflix original film, We Can Be Heroes, directed by Robert Rodriguez, which is a spiritual sequel to The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl, which we covered last week.
Welcome to Heroic's headquarters. You will be staying in our underground stronghold. As the children of superheroes, you are all in danger.
How are you making that? My mommy is Lava Girl, but my daddy is Shark Boy. That's really cool.
This one centers around a new generation of superheroes, the children of Shark Boy and Lava Girl, as well as many other children. But the basic plot of this one is when alien invaders kidnap Earth's clan of superheroes called the Heroics, which is a kind of play on the Avengers, the children of these superheroes must team up and learn to work together to save their parents and save the world.
This was, as we mentioned before, like Shark Boy and Lava Girl and most of Robert Rodriguez's work, was directed, written, scored, shot, and edited all by Robert Rodriguez. Actually, it was produced by Racer Rodriguez, who was his son, who was sort of the creative force behind Shark Boy and Lava Girl. And some of the stars of this movie: Priyanka Chopra, Pedro Pascal, Christian Slater, Soon Kang. The actress that plays Lava Girl reprises her role, but unfortunately, Taylor Lautner does not return as Shark Boy. And last, but definitely not least, Christopher McDonald, our first interview subject and a Slime regular, appears as the President of the United States.
President Neil Anami. Which is not an accidental name.
That might have been my favorite bit in the movie, but we'll get into that.
This movie, it's funny because it's much more of a superhero movie than Shark Boy and Lava Girl, which kind of speaks to the time we're in right now and kind of what kids really like and the wish fulfillment that is current. But I wanted to ask everyone on the subject of wish fulfillment and what you would want. I don't want to ask what superpowers you could have because that's a little too ambitious, but I want to ask what would be your B-level superpower? And what I mean by B-level is not flying or invisibility or the things that could really drastically change your life, but B-level superpowers. Like, what are some things that would just make your life a little bit better if you had them?
I would like to just know and be able to remember any specific piece of information on Wikipedia.
No, that'd be a good one. Yeah, the human
That's a great one.
Wikipedia.
That's how most like super smart genius movie or TV characters are written anyway. So it'd just be like that in real life.
If someone were to edit Wikipedia, would it edit your mind as well?
That's what my Lex Luthor would do, you know?
Yeah. I'm not sure for mine. I know I do have I have 3 cats in a pretty small apartment, and I feel like that ends up causing most of the daily inconveniences I run into. Just cleaning up after them, feeding them, changing the litter box. So I would just want to have some kind of general cat powers, just to clean the cat owner powers, I guess. Keep cleaning up after cats, feeding them litter box, all with no effort at all.
The funniest answer I've ever heard of this is someone said that they wanted their finger to turn into a USB stick that they could store information on. But now I think about that and I think you need an adapter if you have that. So that one's defunct. Mine is I wish I could program my sleep. So I wish I could just be able to like set a clock and be like 10 p.m. going to bed, waking up at 6 a.m. or whatever it is and like go. And that's it.
That leads into a good idea for mine. I wish I didn't have to sleep. I wish I could, or I could only have to sleep for like 30 minutes and that was enough. Or I could have a battery plug, so whenever I'm doing something else, I can just like be charging in lieu of sleep.
You don't like dreams?
I love dreams, but I think sleep is one of the biggest wastes of time.
Well, I feel like a good one would be you could choose to sleep if you wanted to, but you only had to sleep like a little bit.
Yes, that's a good one. I could choose to take a nap, or I don't have to at all.
There's a Bond villain in the Brosnan era where that's literally his thing, is that he only has to sleep for like 1 hour. He has like a sleeping magical mask so he goes, I'm only wasting my time if I sleep. And so basically you're like him.
Is it Die Another Day? Yeah.
Yeah, Die Another Day, which is probably the closest to a Slimehouse movie that a James Bond movie ever gets. It's a blast. It's a real garbage blast, but it's a blast. But I kind of thought differently about this power. My thought is if flying is the A level, like the good superpower, but I'm restricted to only lesser ones, I would choose being able to swim through air. It's like flying, but I'm restricted to only as fast as I can swim. And I look stupid doing it. But it would still be useful.
Yeah, I think that's a good
fair.
one. That's a good one.
I'll say this, Sam. That actually sounds like the superpower of a We Can Be Heroes character.
It does, yeah.
Well, let's dive into this movie. We already kind of gave some more context about kind of what it is. It feels kind of, as Nelson pointed out, kind of this very a younger kids version of the Avengers, except all the superheroes are original.
Yeah, it's amazing that, this is very loosely a sequel to Shark Boy Lava Girl. You don't have to have seen Shark Boy Lava Girl to see this one. They're not even really aesthetically that similar. It's amazing because it has a very Netflix sheen to it. The special effects are actually pretty good, but I watched this actually during the day, which I don't often do with movies, and it actually kind of added to it because it kind of feels like a Saturday morning type of movie.
Shark Boy and Lava Girl, it's sort of incidental that those characters are like superheroes. It's more the world, the dream world of that movie that's important. But in this, I guess you could say it feels like a retcon of Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and that these are characters that now exist in the real world, are recognized as heroes by like everyone around the world. And in the first one, they're pretty much limited to Max's dreams. So it feels like this is sort of just taking those characters and putting them in a superhero movie instead of really being a sequel. Like I feel like I think of it much more as just a spin-off than a sequel after actually watching it.
One question I had watching this is that, are there other characters in this beyond Shark Boy and Lava Girl that exist in the Troublemaker Studios universe? Then maybe they show up in Shorts or another one of his movies.
I don't believe so. I can't speak with like complete confidence, but I don't think so at all.
No, but the cereal Shark Bites is in both movies, so
So it is a sequel. Once there's cereal involved, it's a true direct sequel.
It's a serialized franchise.
I really felt it's so funny. It has Lava Girl in it, but I really felt like it was like a reimagining of Spy Kids with superheroes instead of spies. Like really hard, like even the story, the like structure of the movie, the themes, it kind of feels like he was asked to, which I know Robert Rodriguez was basically asked by Netflix to do a Netflix film because his movies played so well, and it really on Netflix, and to me it's kind of like he really went back to the well, the Spy Kids well a lot on this. I like that. That's my thought was just like it almost felt like I was getting the feels that I felt in Spy Kids more than I felt in Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Oh yeah, I was actually watching Spy Kids 2 like the day before I actually watched this one, and I agree, it feels just tonally, plot-wise, much more like Spy Kids than Shark Boy and Lava Girl. It just feels like those are the characters they went with, but overall, much more of the Spy Kids vibe from Rodriguez than anything in, because it's just not like a fantasy, which I feel like is what's key to Shark Boy and Lava Girl. It's like a fantasy movie if you had to give it a genre.
Yeah, and there's like a villain compound that they raid, and there's like a family element where there generations of families on the inside, and there's actually one point where the score almost like they deliberately do a variation of the Spy Kids theme where I was like, wait, really? Is that it? Like there was a moment, and I wonder if they like had temped the Spy Kids theme in there and then kind of got attached to it or something.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It's like, because at the beginning of Spy Kids, it's like the parents have this cool secret job, and then by the end of the film, the kids do it too, right? And it's just subbing out spies for superheroes in a very obvious way that, yeah, makes it more flavored of Spy Kids than actually of Shark Boy Lava Girl, which is a little bit more of like a dream type movie.
I had an interesting thought though, and maybe we can get into this a little bit more later, but to me this actually almost felt almost too young to be Slimehouse in some way. I think a lot of times when we look at a lot of the Slimehouse movies, they have like something for adults that they can enjoy, something that teenagers can enjoy, and that young kids can enjoy. But this one to me almost felt like it was like solely geared towards young kids. It was hard for me to see like an adult like straight up enjoying this unless they are watching it for some scholarly purpose like ourselves. It felt almost too colorful and fun and juvenile, and not in a bad way juvenile, just, you know, the spirit being very juvenile, to have that kind of snarkiness that a lot of the more slimier movies we've looked at has.
That was my thought.
Completely agree with that. Like, Slimehouse has sort of an edge to it, and I think it's because those movies are targeted towards, like, you know, preteens especially. This is like a whole sort of like development stage before that, like the target audience for this movie. I think it's more like, you know, this is like almost a G-rated movie, not a PG-rated movie. And, you know, Slimehouse is rated PG for crude humor, outrageous hijinks, mild language. So there you go.
Yeah, I wonder if it's the time though, because with Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and again, I disagreed with everyone, but the reason that I felt like there was a little difference between, and why it wasn't the primest slime I'd seen, was that there was a real earnestness where it really felt like he was trying to spark imagination in kids in a way where a lot of slime feels kind of more like, we're selling you something, like we're selling you candy because it's like, this feels a little bad. It's like a little, you know, like you feel kind of, there's like a punk thing to it. And Shark Boy and Lava Girl had some of that, but it felt more a product of its time and like kind of incidental. Whereas like in this one, it's coming out in a time where we don't have as much of that, or at least it's not as mainstream, in my opinion. And so I think there's just less of it, but it had the same like really earnest, like he really wants kids to use their imaginations and work together and find themselves. And so I agree, but I don't think it was that different from Shark Boy in its spirit, I guess.
Perhaps just they didn't have as many, for me at least, I'll be curious what y'all think. It didn't have as many of the kind of gags that feel Slimehouse. It had some dialogue, and a couple of the superpowers felt very slimy, but in general, it didn't have a lot of that crude humor and stuff. And that's why I feel like it had more in common with like Power Rangers on TV or something that you'd see in that way that I don't really consider primetime slime, but sort of is like parallel to the way Slimehouse works. And I think that's just a byproduct of like Netflix probably need something a little bit more modern for their audiences today, since this is a new title, whereas some of the other 2020 slimes were much more like throwbacks.
Yeah, something that sort of stood out about this one to me is the original Shark Boy and Lava Girl is set pretty much solely in like complete like CGI landscapes that just get like increasingly absurd. In this, most of the settings are like just set in the real world, like in a house or in a classroom, until the very end when they get to the alien spaceship, and then it gets super slimy. It looks a lot like Shark Boy and Lava Girl, but
Alien spaceship is the real world. at this point in time.
Yeah.
The one thing about the ship that I thought was really interesting was like the color of it and how it was all like very purple. To me, it felt very much like the mission in one of the like the Halo games when you go into that spaceship and you rescue Captain Keyes, that mission.
There was I got a lot of vibes of Spy Kids there where when they infiltrate Floop's lair, and it's like this really, it's like there's no real, it's like you're like living in a real cartoon. It's like a bubblegum pop cartoon ship.
Yeah, for sure. And to me, kind of on your note, Jared, this movie did feel like it had a very video game mentality to it, and how the kids moved almost from place to place and level. I mean, it's not level to level in this movie, but the way in which the narrative moves from location to location and how they learn the different skills and learn how to work together did almost kind of feel like a video game in some way.
Or an escape room at one point.
Or an escape room, yes. Actually, that's maybe a more apt comparison. But I think that idea then leads into some of the more key Slimehouse narrative tropes that I do think exist in this movie very heavily. The first of which is definitely that like kids can do anything that the adults can do. And that core, I think, is just slime to a T.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a second thing with that too, and that's that the adults at the beginning, and almost the entire runtime don't trust the kids at all, and they kind of dismiss the kids, and the kids have to really stand up for themselves. And because originally they're like, oh, kids, you're just going to stay in the basement while we fix the problems. But then the kids are like, no, we have to be the ones to save the day. We can
be heroes.
Then we can be heroes just for one day.
Yeah, I like that they use that song like at least 3 times referenced it, I think. Like
It was what poor Bowie, man.
It was funny. I assumed that they just named it "We Can Be Heroes" as kind of like an homage or whatever. But the fact that they use it 3 different times in this movie is, at first it was like funny, but then it became to me just kind of like annoying.
Well, let's give some context for our viewers who haven't seen the movie. There's a particular superhero named Acapella, and her superpower is she can sing acapella really well. And so her singing actually does powerful things like makes dogs bark, or raises a school bus, or makes the bad guys shriek and have to fall down. And so the song has purpose because it's her anthem and it allows her to save the day.
So she, for the record, she has telekinesis, but only while she's singing. Is the way that it, in practicality, how it works.
Well, 'cause, yeah, when she sings low, it just gives her like complete like at first she's like, I can raise this ground and stuff, but then slowly it seems like it's just fully powered telekinesis.
Yeah,
but she has to be hitting a low note while it occurs.
There is a real spectrum of how useful these children's powers are.
Yeah, so real quick, I think we need to go down the list. I think we got too ahead of ourselves, and we need to kind of fill everyone in on the nicknames and powers of all of these heroes. So I just pulled up the list, and anyone can chime in. I'll say the name and the power, but if you guys have something you want to talk about with a specific hero, please do chime in. So to start, we have Missy Moreno, who's kind of the main lead character of the bunch, who doesn't necessarily have a superpower, but the narrative is kind of her learning that her superpower is being a leader and being the one who brings the team together, much like her father, who is the leader of the heroics. Next, we have Noodles, whose superpower is that he's very stretchy and can stretch his body very long, and his arms very long. Kind of like Inspector Gadget meets Mrs. Incredible.
Yeah, he's got one of the more useful superpowers. I do want to say that to the film's screenwriting credit, all the superpowers play off or each other and are used, but yes, it is much more helpful to be elastic than, say, I don't know, what are the other ones?
Face guy.
Yeah, the face guy. It's Face Maker.
That leads into the next one is Facemaker, who is a young kid who can imitate any face he wants to. He only uses this superpower twice. Once in his introduction in the movie. 2, I don't want to give it away, but he disguises himself as somebody else to penetrate the villain's security room. It's a pretty useless power.
Well, they pay it off well, but for most of the movie, he's just doing goofy reaction shots for most of the movie.
Yes. He really brought the Slime-O-meter up. I don't think it's fair to say he only did 2 things, because he had a lot of faces. Whether they actually did anything or not is another story. I think my favorite is his early line where he says, "The last look on my dad's face will haunt me forever." And then he does a face.
That was funny. That was so funny.
Yeah, that was good. That was probably the best joke in the whole thing.
For the record, Facemaker, the primest of child actor looks.
Maybe that's why they cast him first, then gave him a superpower second.
Moving forward, literally, we have Wheels, whose superpower is that one of his superpowers he can't necessarily act on because his muscles are so big and strong that they crush his bones, so he has to be in a wheelchair, a super powered, super fast wheelchair. But he's also super powered in the mind, so he's very, very intelligent. He's the brains of the operation, and he gets a lot to do. I think he has the most lines out of everyone beyond Missy.
He's kind of like Link in The Matrix, where he's kind of like the guy who does the tech stuff.
Yeah, I liked him. He was one of my favorite of the whole crew, and probably the most important, other than the very main girl.
I was really into the kid that is very, very slow, and his dad is very, very fast.
Yes.
Slow-mo is his
Slow-mo.
name.
Solo, yes.
Now, what was their reason for why he was? Because they were like, it was something like he's so fast that he's slow.
They said
Like,
he
there was
got
some-
caught in a time loop.
And I figured maybe like one of the big redemptions at the end was they were gonna figure out how to get him out of the time loop, but they never do.
But they do, because thankfully this is a team sport, and there was another pair of twins. We've got Rewind and Fast Forward, whose powers are not equal as well. One of them can make time go backwards, and one of them can make time go forwards. Think about which one's more useful for a quick second.
Well, she could only go back like a little bit. Didn't she have a limit? She could, yeah.
When they work together, they have even more abilities, and they actually help slow-mo slow go.
So I had a theory watching it that I was like, oh, they're gonna be able to, because the whole thing is that they don't work together. Like they hate each other and are never in lockstep, and then they start working together. And I was like, if they work together, are they gonna freeze time and be able to do some clock stopper stuff? Which was like, I was kind of excited about. And then it wasn't that. It was something a little bit more kind of non sequitur-y. But yeah, they were able to do some slowing things, individual things, and doing some time stuff.
Yeah, and I think these were probably, as far as the powers go, like pretty generic powers, but probably my favorite in the movies, just because I liked kind of how like they would do the effect with the editing, where it would rewind or go fast forward. Like I liked that they did that in the editing of the movie whenever they do it. I thought that was a neat choice.
Must have been written by someone who edits a lot.
Well, it's Robert Rodriguez. Robert Rodriguez wanted a little less editing work back at the studio.
It's funny, his rejected superheroes, L-Cut and Daily Sync.
That one's for the heads. Fast forwarding. There's still 3 or 4 more superheroes we have to get.
Yeah,
to.
we got a few.
This is a stacked cast. So the next one is Wild Card, whose superpower is that he can actually manifest any superpower he wants to. He just doesn't know how to because he can't focus. So he turns into like a bowling ball on accident because he can't focus. Which is pretty impressive that he can literally do whatever he wants. And it seems kind of unfair to have a character who does that.
I feel like this was kind of like, not stolen, but it was very similar to Jack in The Incredibles, where like his powers are unclear and he
interesting.
can do whatever, but like has no power over which power he does. I do think it's an interesting idea. Like I like the idea of this character.
Yeah, I was kind of curious how they were going to give him the ability to control it, but it was kind of more like he just needed to believe in himself, I guess.
Yeah, which I think speaks to the like ethos of you can do anything if you just believe in yourself, which is a very Slimehouse. I mean, it's a very children's movie, fantasy movie kind of theme, but it's repeated so much in kind of the Slimehouse world.
And the way it manifests is very DIY, which I think, especially you, Jasper, we talk a lot about that particular kind of ethos or like kind of like spirit, the DIY spirit. And I feel like Rodriguez as a filmmaker is very much like, you know, has that kind of going for him, but like I feel like that's also here in the movie with these characters and their arcs.
I like the way you look at that, Jared. Do it yourself, believe in yourself. It all kind of, you know, as a kid, you can be anything. You can be a hero.
Yeah, and I feel like the things he turns himself into also sort of owe themselves to that. Like we mentioned the bowling ball, which we've seen used, I think, as like a weapon in at least like 2 or 3 of these movies so far, and in this as well. He turns into a bowling ball that hits a guy in the foot, which I feel like it was a pretty slimy slapstick gag to put in that scene.
I feel like there are a lot of toasters in Slimehouse movies.
Oh, the
Or
toaster
toasters
bit
of-
was so funny.
Yeah.
I actually, that was the one time I actually legitimately laughed out loud.
You guys keep saying that, and the answer is there are a lot of funny things in this. It's like, yeah, that
There
was
are.
the one, but we've
There
named
are.
like 3.
I digress. I actually think this is a very fun movie beyond kind of the Slimehouse exploration. I think it's actually quite fun. But the toaster joke, I let out a louder guffaw than a typical laugh.
As long as you know what you're in for, I think you're in for a good time. And you know who really knows what we're in for is a superhero named Oho, because she's got an iPad that predicts the future.
Yes, she's an artist who draws what's going to happen next, which is pretty cool.
But she doesn't talk. She doesn't talk, so you don't quite know.
I feel like it was pretty clear what her drawings were doing, but it took they didn't catch on for a long time.
In that sense, it kind of felt like a Blue's Clues moment, where it's like, oh, where are the bubbles coming from?
Yeah, it's just bizarre. They thought her skill was just being really good at drawing, which
they weren't particularly.
No, like they were fine, but they looked like a kid's drawings, like still, like, and the way they described her, they said she was like, I forget, they said something ridiculous, like she was Monet combined with Dali and
Goya.
Yeah.
Which now later she does draw some cool things.
Yeah,
she does. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to spoil anything, but you have to see it to believe it. And there's one more superhero we have to get to, and this is the daughter of Shark Boy and Lava Girl. That this is the one who ties the universe together, and it's Guppy, who's actually the youngest of the bunch, but she has the powers of both Shark Boy and Lava Girl. She can control water and make things really hot.
She controls water in the way that Lava Girl controls lava.
Yes.
And then she's also strong and has rage.
she has shark strength. That's a specific. Yeah. There's a specific line.
Yes. And Guppy was wonderful.
Oh, fan favorite right here. She was too much fun.
And I think Guppy also maybe the slimiest, most traditionally slimy element to the movie, which, I mean, it makes sense. She's the daughter of two Slimehouse legends, and she continues their legacy, because just a lot of the humor with her, just like having a little girl like roar like a shark. I guess sharks don't roar, but in this universe they do. So.
Sharks don't do a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, they had a lot of humor with her being a little girl, like beating up grown men, which I feel like sort of had that classic emasculation humor of Slimehouse. Like, just the humor of having a little girl beat up grown men feels very slimy to me, and yeah, I love this character.
She even had like her own theme song, which uses the same melody as the Dream song in Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Oh yeah.
Oh. Da, 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 da. If you go back, you'll know it. You'll hear it.
At one point, the security guards think they can take her. They're about to beat up a 4-year-old. And then they notice there are cushions on the ground, and they say, "Why are there cushions on the ground?" And Guppy, without missing a beat, goes, "To protect your butts when you hit the ground," and then beats them up and flips them onto the cushions.
There was a breakdown, like a stunt and VFX breakdown that Netflix released, where it's Robert Rodriguez talking about those stunts. And when I was watching it, I was like, So they just had the little girl stand there as a guy just did a flip over. There's, sometimes you can tell where the compositing or trickery is, but I was like, I think truly this girl held onto this guy's arm and he just flung himself over her and onto a cushion. And then they were showing the breakdown, and that's exactly what they did.
I think somebody saying Guppy is the slimiest leads into a really quick discussion. Who do you guys individually think is the slimiest hero in this movie?
Well, Guppy's great, but I think the slimiest is Face Boy.
Facemaker, interesting. My pick is actually Noodles. I thought Noodles was so kind of just out there, and he had the same kind of like slimy attitude. Not like a mean-spirited attitude, but just kind of like a fun, extreme attitude to him. I loved Noodles. He was my favorite.
For me, it's this is cheating, but it's the two siblings that can rewind and fast forward. Mainly because, one of the few tropes we can talk about is like the sibling rivalries that we sometimes see in Slimehouse movies. And they have that going.
This is so interesting because we all have different ones, but I'm probably, I think Facemaker. But also, Wildcard has some of the bully tropes.
Oh, yeah.
He certainly starts very, very slime bully.
Definitely.
Yeah,
That's a
for
very
sure.
good point.
He definitely reminded me a lot, kind of the bully. I don't remember his name. In I think War and Peace might be his name in Sky
Yes,
High.
War and Peace.
Which in general, I didn't really even think of this until now. This movie shares a lot of similarities to Sky High. The kids are younger, but like as far as like superhero parents, superhero school, that's like very Sky High.
So I watched this with my fiance, and there was a moment where I was like, it's weird that the main girl isn't the daughter of like the Captain Miracle guy. You know, I already forget his name, but like that she isn't his daughter, because he really seems like the superheroiest of the superheroes. And it would feel the most impactful that she would have no powers despite being his daughter. And then she goes, well, then it would just be Sky High. And I was like, oh, you're right. You're totally right. This would just be exactly Sky High if it were for
Which
that.
honestly, it's to this movie's credit that while watching it, I didn't think of Sky High.
How do we defeat the aliens who defeated all of the heroics?
We have a secret weapon. Teamwork.
Ready for battle, blood and pearls. It's a good day to save the world.
I feel like we're walking on eggshells with this movie because it's like the first time we've talked about something where it came out like a week or two ago. Like a lot of the trope material we could talk about is like, we want you to watch the movie, we don't want to like ruin it.
I think we can talk about some of the character tropes, and I'll just start by doing one, and that's the kind of bureaucrats and people who are all adults figures who are very sleazy and just don't believe in children at all. And the president of the United States kind of, there are a few like tongue-in-cheek moments where they're clearly jabbing at a certain president of the United States, but there are other ones where it just feels like that kind of almost like the Mayor Quimby of The Simpsons, where it's just like a person in charge, but they're not really doing a very good job. And we see that a lot of the heroics at the base kind of have that, and the president as well.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note as well, I think we talk a lot about the bumbling cops in Slimehouse, and there's no police in particular in this movie or specifically, but there are a lot of bumbling security guards and like Secret Service-y type guys in this movie that, you know, think they can take the children, but the children are just so much stronger and, as Nelson said, throw the security guards on their butts.
I'll tell you my favorite security guard moment. They work for the government. They're able to track and tap into the kids using their watch. And so they're spying on the kids as they train for their big battle. And the adult in charge says, like, where are the children? What are they doing? And the security guard listens in and hears that a cappella is singing a song. And he goes, ma'am, they are rocking out.
There was another, like, true non-ironic laugh I had. Like, it was very funny. You know, on the subject of characters, I don't know that this is a slime trope, but the like badass grandma character.
Oh, I'd say that's a Slimehouse trope. I feel like we see that a lot.
I do think there's a lot of validity to that kind of wise old grandparent trope. I think it, you know, leans into that kind of respect your elders. If their grandparents say it's right, then it must be right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we kind of seen that in like Home Alone is one where like the old man turns out to be like the source of like the message and the knowledge, and then in Monster Squad, same goes for the old man. I feel like seeing like the parents are either like fools or like struggling or whatever, and then the old people like 60 plus, 65 plus are the ones who are the sources of great wisdom and all that. I feel like that's something that you see in maybe just movies in general, but I've noticed it specifically in at least a couple of these Slimehouse movies.
And in Spy Kids 2, the grandparents are a very similar role, where they come in as wise mentors for everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a little bit of the uncle in the first one as well.
And on kind of the parental note, yet again, we see a single parent in this movie. The single parent trope, it might be the most common trope we see.
Yeah,
It's
for
pretty
sure.
crazy. Either single parent or overworked workaholic parents.
We debated the Slimehouse-ness of the movie, which I think is worth debating. But one thing that makes it feel Slimehouse is that it really is a movie for kids and like where kids can do anything and kind of encouraging them to like go out and do it. And there are a few lines that feel literally manifesting that thought out loud. In particular, there's one where they say the spaceship feels like it was designed to be operated by children. And
Yeah. And there's a few lines like that. At one point, they talk about the children being in charge. There's just a lot of lines about, like, the children are stepping up, the children are the one. And I feel like that's what gives it the key slime ethos, is that the kids are having to save the adults. And even though, yeah, as Nelson said, we've sort of already sort of debated the sliminess, I do think that is such a key slime element, is that this is really, like, kids in charge, kids can do anything, sort of like Shark Boy and Lava Girl and Spy Kids too, just about like the power of imagination and the power of childhood.
The way that shows up in this is more of like a, you know, we've seen that in other movies where like, you know, kids aren't listened to, but like it's like sort of an empowerment fantasy from the kids' point of view. But I feel like this movie, it's more like, you know, telling kids you are the future, you have the, you know, you are the future is like what I think of, but like you have the power to change things and see things differently and have new ideas. So it's a subtle difference, and maybe I'm not doing it justice, but I think the way this movie presents that kind of theme is just a little different.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's very of the moment, I would say too, that it's not just like you can defeat evil, but you can use those powers for a greater good beyond that. And it plays into that anti-authoritarian kind of bend that we see in a lot of these movies too. I think, Jared, you also pointed this out, is I think one of the more key thematics of Slimehouse is
to me, it's like, you know, for something to be Slimehouse, when, you know, from my kind of like definition, it has to have something like that where there's something that's going against the grain, and this movie has that.
There's a moment where the kids have to escape the Heroics headquarters and they disguise as grown-ups, and then Noodles at one point, as they're walking through the halls in disguise, he goes, "Greetings, fellow grown-ups."
That was another really good laugh.
That was a good one, yes.
Yeah, one thing I thought that was interesting about this that made it stand out, maybe this is something I've kind of noticed in a lot of the Neo slime we've watched, is a lot of the classic slime we talk about, there's sort of a very anti-authoritarian streak in that these movies are about kids wanting to do whatever they want and just have fun, like at the expense of everything else. Like they want to play the ultimate prank or get the school closed down or something like that. In this, and in a lot of the Neo slime, it seems to be sort of like kids can do more than that. Kids can like save the world, kids can save adults, because it feels like in a lot of the older Slimehouse, when we talk about like kids can do anything, it means like kids can throw toilet paper all over the schools. I feel like that the Neo slime in general we've watched has been sort of more epic in scope. I feel like if this were made like in like 2002, the kids would use their superpowers to play pranks, and there'd be way more gross stuff, and like, especially since one of the kids' powers is like funny faces and stretching, it almost like asks itself for that, and it never really goes there, which I think makes it feel very centered in sort of a Neo slime version of the typical Rodriguez Slimehouse we've seen.
If we want to rescue our parents and save the planet, we're gonna need to do it now.
But we're children. The children of the heroics. Time to be a hero. I'm in. Let's do this.
One thing I'll contribute to the trope discussion is we don't see too much of this, but, you know, the one line that really sticks out is when all the parents are captured, Shark Boy gets taunted at one point, and then Lava Girl's like, "Calm down, Shark Boy, he's just baiting you." So like it's there's the pun aspect of that, which is slime, you know, maybe slimy, but also I think of another movie we watched called House Arrest, where there was a little bit of sort of like a parental rivalry between, like, you know, it's less about the kids, and it's more about competitive kind of like unspoken nature between the parents.
And maybe that because I think, Max, I think you're right on the money, and that's maybe why I wasn't feeling like this was like a 10 out of 10 slime, is because Jared brings up the House Arrest comparison, and in House Arrest, their ultimate fantasy is to put the parents in the basement, whereas in this one, the ultimate fantasy is to like rescue the parents from a huge spaceship and like, you know, save the planet, you know, so it just, the stakes are that much bigger.
That's true. I agree with that. I feel like the sympathy towards the adult characters And not only sympathy, I mean, like, all these characters, I guess that, like, the adults are also the heroes in this, which I think is a key difference that separates it from a lot of slime that came before. Because, I mean, even Shark Boy and Lava Girl, which the parents are, like, are not villains by any means, but they are, like, the teacher, he's presented as the villain in the movie, and the parents are just sort of fighting and just sort of a source of conflict in his life. In this, that's not really the case at all.
On that note, should we have a brief press pause for spoilers and get into the twist of this movie?
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
So if you're listening, please press pause for spoilers.
So it's kind of like there's a twist on a twist, and the first twist is that you find out that the president and the leader of the Heroics headquarters, played by Priyanka Chopra, are aliens. And that actually reminded me a lot of another Robert Rodriguez movie that Christopher McDonald was also in, called The Faculty. The aliens themselves have this very body snatchers-esque kind of quality to them.
It's sort of akin to the real world we live in, where lizard people control all the powerful positions, like the government. And so
that's the first part of the twist. Second part of the twist is that Oho, the young superhero who draws these beautiful pictures that predict the future, has actually planned out this whole entire training to train the superheroes and pass off the responsibility of their parents to the kids. So the aliens are actually helping prepare the kid heroes for the real world.
Mind blown.
Setting up for a new franchise.
I had a question. You know, like, I liked the movie a lot, actually. It's hard to give plot criticisms because it's not like it's like the finest plotted movie ever, but that twist, the parents who were held there, I assume that they would be aware of what's going on and their bickering was all an act.
No, I don't think so.
But wouldn't they have been kids at one time who took on from the previous generation? Am I just reading so much into this?
No, the Heroics, I don't think there was a previous Heroics. I think it's like the Avengers, where they assembled and then now they're making babies. And so this is the first time kids have had to do the training.
So in essence, there's like no bad guys in this movie, is there? So
Yeah.
like this is something I wanted to bring up, and I was worried I was not going to be able to bring this up because of the spoilers. This isn't the first movie that I think pertains to this, but I think there's a subgenre of film that hasn't been defined yet besides Slimehouse, and I call it nice core. And here's what nice core is. Nice Core is a movie where there might be conflict, but there's no evil. Everyone's just kind of nice. Everything kind of resolves nicely in the end, and even like the antagonists of the movie they don't do anything bad. Everyone just gets along. I think Elf has that because the closest thing there is to a bad guy in that is James Caan's character, and he's a good guy by the end, and he never does anything terrible. This is just a very specific kind of movie. It's just a very easygoing vibe.
Well, I never thought I would be able to bring this up on the Slimehouse podcast, but I do remember my younger sister, we'd watch a lot of Disney movies where they had characters like Captain Hook and the Evil Queen, and so she was very scared of bad guys. But I remember one time we were watching a video called Linnea in Monet's Garden, and it was an animated movie all about Monet's garden. And my sister, who was probably like 3 or 4, was like, I love this movie. There are no bad guys. So there is a place for nice core. I think that's a true thing, Jared.
I don't know that it's that different, though. I mean, like, I feel like the first Spy Kids is a little bit in that, like, there are definitely more clear-cut antagonists in that, but like nobody's really awful or irredeemable in it, and I would say the same for Shark Boy, the original.
Yeah.
Mr. Electric, he's the evil dream version of a person who's like kind of flawed but not bad.
I think what Jared's saying is there is no bad guy in the end. They were all kind of playing for the same team.
Yeah, and no one needed to be vanquished.
Yeah, this is a movie without any villain. Like, the villain is all part of the twist.
Right. That's fair.
And it's interesting, in the Spy Kids franchise, often bad guys from the first one will come back and be part of the team in the second one. Mm-hmm. So that is kind of a Robert Rodriguez thing, is that he doesn't have villains. Even like Steve Buscemi, you think is going to be a villain in Spy Kids 2, turns out he's not a villain.
Yeah.
He's just kind of a misunderstood soul.
Yeah, there's, I guess my only key difference I would say is that there's like the movies that are where everyone's nice because they're deliberately making a kind movie, and there are movies like Elf. It's not like they set out to make a movie with no conflict and only kind people. They set out to make a movie that happened to be the kind of movie where the villain is a flawed father. It's not Monet's Garden to me.
And with that, let's jump into some slime scores. Anyone want to kick it off?
I'm going to go with a 7 on this one. I think it's got a lot of slimy elements, but I don't think it's kind of rock your socks slime. And I think that's mostly attributed to the fact that it's just a newer movie, and so it's kind of removed from primetime slime. And so that's where I'm going to go with.
Okay. So this almost felt like to Shark Boy and Lava Girl in 3D what Casper Meets Wendy was to Casper. More for a home video environment kind of vibe. At least I felt that when I watched it. Maybe it's not as theatrical as Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and I gave that a slightly lower score than some of the other people on the show did, but I think it's not too much lower on the Slime-O-Meter. So I'm going to agree with Nelson and go with a 7 here, because it definitely has the cartoony element that we look for. It has a lot of kid empowerment going against the grain themes that we look for. And it's definitely not like a revelation like some of the stuff we covered in the last episode last season, like the main event. It's a solid entry in the Slimehouse canon.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also give this a 7. I think it's got some slimy elements for sure, and I mean it's a sequel to what is a very slimy movie, but overall, just comparing it to that movie, it's certainly a lot less slimy outside of like the theme we've talked about of sort of the kid empowerment. There's not too much slime, like other slime tropes in this, and I just don't really feel like there is humor, but it's the not necessarily slimy humor, and there's not that much humor in it either. It's just, I feel like overall it is slimy, but yeah, I gotta go with a 7, sort of just echoing what Nelson and Jared have already said.
I think I was the lowest for Shark Boy, for the Shark Boy and Lava Girl. I think I gave it a 6. So I think that by that metric, this is like a 4.5 for me. Where I think the key difference is just it's such a loving movie. It's like it's really, really earnest. There's just nothing punk about it in any sort of way, and that's I guess a way I measure slime movies in for my own personal rubric. So I think it's like Shark Boy in its earnestness, even more so, and then it has even fewer of the kind of trappings, the tropiness. I'll round it up to a 5.
I'm definitely the highest then. I was teetering it up at a 9, to be honest, but I'll go with an 8 after our discussion. I think a lot of the kid empowerment, narratives that we all talked about really fit in that slime vein. But I think for me, one of the big slime factors of this is a lot of the aesthetics just feel very slimy to me. We talk about how like Slimehouse are child exploitation movies, and not in a bad way, just like the genre of exploitation movie, not literally exploiting children, for anyone who is still confused. This is a movie that to me very, very clearly fits that ethos of it's a superhero movie, it's a genre movie that is written to feature children in those roles, and so kids can enjoy that very hyper-specific genre of movie. While there isn't a lot of humor, I definitely think there's an attitude of sliminess to it. That said, I do think it reads a lot, not a lot, but as I kind of mentioned earlier, younger than a lot of the kind of the peak, more cruder slime. So I'm going to give it an 8. But yeah, overall, very fun time. I thought I had more fun with this than like some of the Marvel superhero movies. That's We Can Be Heroes, out streaming on Netflix now. Go watch it. Let us know what you think. And until next time, stay slimy, y'all.
Slimehouse, a podcast created by Jared Anderson, Jasper Birnbaum, Max Morris, and H. Nelson Tracy. If you like this episode, you can find more fun on slimehousepod.com. Our website is created by Brian Hume of Valencia Creative Company. Our theme music composed by Greta Russell. Support this podcast at anchor.fm/slimehousepod or by following us on social media at slimehousepod on all platforms.